Hello everyone, it is July 1st and in a few days we'll be celebrating our country's birthday. So a happy birthday to our country. I'm proud to say that I served 8 years in the Illinois National Guard, was honorably discharged. Some countries like South Korea and Israel, when you turn 18, you have to serve 2 years on the front lines. And I look at our kids today, and I don't think it's a bad idea. And a kid graduates high school, go serve 2 years in the military, because you learn discipline, you learn respect for the country, something that our kids just don't have anymore. So anyways, enough of that. Let's move on to our top 5 to stay alive. Okay, you know what? It's summertime, and a lot of people get the summertime blues because as they look at their lawn, those nasty weeds keep popping up. Well, topic number 1, we're talking about something that you need to know about. This could be the biggest blow ever to the biotech bully Monsanto. Just last week, a Superior Court judge issued a tentative ruling that California was within its rights to require that a warning be put on the herbicide Roundup saying it may cause cancer. Obviously, the last thing Monsanto wants is people to see this statement tipping them off that a chemical might be killing a lot more than just the weeds. For years, Monsanto has been running TV commercials for Roundup with cutesy jingles showing tough guys protecting their driveways from dandelions. Well, I wonder how the company would feel about adding something to those ads about Roundup and cancer. Bet it would take a whole crew of madmen in a big ad agencies to spin that one. But there are more ways to be exposed to Roundup, or more specifically its active ingredient glyphosate. That just using it on a driveway, more on that in a minute. First, the big blow to this corporate Teflon bully must have been a shock. For decades, Monsanto has spent king's ransom to kill off labeling laws for the frankenfoods that genetically modified seeds grow with. But apparently it couldn't buy off the entire world. 2 years ago, a branch of the World Health Organization, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, identified glyphosate as a probable carcinogen. And that's when Monsanto's worries began. You see, it's pretty hard to argue with what's considered the gold standard in research, as the IARC is, but still the company tried. California, like several other states, the U.S. government, even other countries, rely on IARC's findings on cancer-causing substances. So Monsanto, having seen the handwriting on the wall, sued California to try and stop it from adding cancer warnings to its products. And in what must have been the surprise of the century for Monsanto, it lost. A California Superior Court judge just ruled that yes, Roundup can and should be slapped with a cancer warning label. Of course, the company already has its legal team fighting the state's order tooth and nail, but here's the craziest part of all. Monsanto is saying that by using the highly respected IARC decision that its beloved chemical may cause cancer, the state is allowing an unelected foreign body in France, where IARC is headquartered, to make decisions on California matters. Aside from being the most ridiculous argument to ever hit a courtroom, it's not without a touch of irony, because Monsanto is now in the process of being gobbled up by the German chemical giant Bayer, meaning that American farmers who buy its bioengineered seeds will soon have their livelihoods dependent on a foreign entity. As I mentioned earlier, there are more ways to be exposed to Roundup or glyphosate than just picking up a container at Walmart or Home Depot and spraying on a patch of driveway weeds. According to the Associated Press, California farmers now use it on more than 250 types of crops, and that's a whole lot more than a half dozen or so commodities now being genetically modified to make them Roundup ready. As we broke the news to you last year, that's probably because Monsanto has been encouraging the use of the chemical as a drying agent or a desiccant on numerous crops just prior to harvest. Testing last year even found glyphosate in oat cereal for infants. But while completely avoiding exposure to it may now be almost impossible, Here are the top 3 ways to protect yourself and your family from everyday sources of glyphosates. Number 1, go for organic when buying bread and other items made from flour, lentils, peas, dry beans, flax, barley, potatoes, and oats. Those crops most likely have been sprayed with the chemical before harvesting. Number 2, for the big 3 GMO crops, soy, canola, and corn, your choices should be organic or those labeled GMO free. And number 3, don't use Roundup around your home. It may be an easy way to kill weeds, but honestly, is that something worth risking your family's health over? Topic number 2. Another very loud and clear warning has just been sounded about the class of drugs known as beta blockers. These commonly prescribed meds are used to treat high blood pressure and routinely handed out to patients with heart disease. I've been saying there is no advantage whatsoever in prescribing beta blockers to most heart attack patients. It was all risk and no gain. Now, researchers from several highly respected health institutions, including UCLA, have found that they pose a special danger to those with diabetes. That not only includes life-threatening low blood sugar, but a big risk for cardiovascular events such as heart attack, stroke, and sudden cardiac arrest, a killer that takes down over 325,000 in the U.S. every year, where the first symptom is death. Beta blockers look like they're well on their way to going into the annals of medicine as one of the riskiest yet most prescribed drugs out there. For one thing, they can actually cause diabetes. Evidence from the long-term nurses' health study found that those taking these drugs could up the risk of developing the disease by almost a third. Second, beta blockers put anyone with diabetes, whether it's type 1 or 2, in jeopardy of severe hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, which is said to be a glucose reading of below 70 mg/dl. And to make the matters even worse, since these drugs slow down your heart rate, you might not even recognize one of the telltale warnings that your blood sugar is failing to dangerous levels, a racing pulse. Certainly, having diabetes is hard enough without adding another layer of worry to it. Anytime you're taking insulin or pills to lower your blood sugar, hypoglycemia is a risk, and it looks like taking a beta blocker can make it an extreme risk. But as bad as that sounds, some new research that also confirmed the hypoglycemia risk has found that these drugs, ones that are given out like candy to treat heart disease, can actually make it worse. Researchers from UCLA, several universities in Japan, and the National Center for Global Health and Medicine in Tokyo analyzed some of the best data out there where type 2 diabetes is concerned, which came out of the authoritative ACCORD trial. ACCORD was a 10-year study conducted at 77 medical centers in the U.S. and Canada, and one of the most important accomplishments was busting the long-term standing that diabetes should be using a bevy of drugs to get their top systolic blood pressure number down below 120. It found that kind of extreme blood pressure control to be not only a wrong approach, but a downright dangerous one. Now, what this current study uncovered using the ACCORD data is that the beta blockers not only significantly contributed to diabetic suffering from all these heart events that I mentioned earlier, but that they even posed a risk to both those with and without heart disease and when the drugs were started. It sounds like that old flip of the coin, heads I win, tails you lose. As I recently told you, dispensing these kinds of meds is pretty much the knee-jerk approach in caring for anyone, diabetic or otherwise, who has had a heart attack. And that's still the case despite the fact we also know that beta blockers can double the risk of suffering from major depression, as well as cause side effects such as dizziness, lightheadedness, and a very slow heart rate, all of which can add up to your risk of taking a bad fall. It all adds up to the fact that these drugs, which have been dispensed for around a half century, are just too dangerous on too many fronts to be handed out so haphazardly. And if you're currently taking one, and they go by many generic names such as metoprolol, acebutolol, propranolol, it's very important that you schedule a visit with your doctor and find out if you can get off it, especially if you're a diabetic. But be careful not to stop suddenly on your own, as that can trigger a steep rise in your blood pressure as well as heart palpitations. So be careful. Topic number 3. Dr. Fernando Avila, a physician from Texas, has been in hot water with his state's medical board numerous times. 5 years ago, he was even required to take a competency exam after an office procedure left a patient with brain damage. Dr. Metalius Leon, also from Texas, had his license to practice medicine restricted after a complaint was filed about sexually harassing patients. Dr. Mohammed Diab from California is on a 7-year probation, and Dr. Michael Reese from New Jersey had his license suspended for several years. Now, all these doctors and thousands more have something in common. What is that besides being scumbags? Despite their history of misconduct, they continue to receive hefty fees from pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers as promotional speakers, consultants, and expert advisors. A new report is giving us an inside look at how thousands of delinquent doctors have been allowed to stay aboard the big pharma gravy train without the colleagues they're giving that expert advice to even being known about their delinquency. The long-standing big pharma practice of paying doctors to help teach their colleagues has been one of the drug industry's biggest secrets. Then came the Open Payment Program, a federal database that gave us a look at exactly what drug companies and device makers pay to promote their goods and which doctors they're paying. Well, here's the second biggest secret Big Pharma didn't want you to know about. A lot of those doctors who are giving talks and lectures and maybe even telling your own doctor about drugs and devices aren't even allowed to practice medicine. Of course, the drug makers will say that all their spoke stocks are thoroughly vetted. But when consumer watchdog ProPublica did an investigation, it found that well over 2,000 doctors who were on the industry payroll had long histories of bad behavior. And that was just for 2 years and a handful of states. Even so, from that group, ProPublica analyzed that 40 doctors had their license to practice medicine revoked or voluntarily surrendered it, in most cases permanently. Another 180 were under license suspension, and 250 had been put on probation. And these are the so-called experts, an industry spokesman says, who provide crucial feedback on products and help teach other doctors about new drugs and devices. The ProPublica investigation found industry payments going to doctors who had been disciplined for everything from sexual misconduct, writing inappropriate prescriptions for addictive drugs, to cheating insurance programs, and even the IRS. Dr. Reese, for example, who received $85,000 consulting fees for Johnson & Johnson, had pleaded guilty to hiding millions from the IRS in Swiss bank accounts, yet the industry money kept pouring in. Dr. Leon was paid over $26,000 from AstraZeneca for speaking fees and travel expenses, despite the fact he had been barred from seeing female patients without a chaperone for several years. It's obvious that Big Pharma will do just about anything to get us sold on using its drugs, and one of the best time-tested ways appears to be to use doctors to influence other docs, even if they can no longer practice medicine. Or, as Dr. Charles Rosen, the co-founder of the Association of Medical Ethics, put it, I think they pay the devil if no one knows, and he sells a lot of drugs. Probably. Topic number 4. It may be one of the most underhanded and dangerous things the FDA has ever done, and believe me, that's saying something. For months, I've been warning you about a major health crisis involving a surgical scopes. They're used to give surgeons a better look inside your body, and some of them are filthier than a gas station bathroom. In fact, these scopes have now been linked to deadly superbug infections all across America. Now, the FDA is defying Congress and refusing to pull equipment off the market that may have helped cause the outbreaks. It's a move that puts patients everywhere at risk, and the FDA is doing everything it can to hide its real motives. This may be unprecedented in the history of medical device regulation. That's what scientist Lawrence Muscarella had to say about the FDA's recent decision to let custom ultrasonic scope cleaning machines stay on the market. You see, Muscarella is the former director of infection control at Custom Ultrasonics, and he was so concerned about the safety problems with the equipment that he left the company. And while Dr. Muscarella was unfortunate enough to distance himself from custom ultrasonic scope cleaners, lots of patients weren't so lucky. The company's equipment is used in hospitals all across the country to clean scopes in between uses. But a Senate investigation in January found that they seem to clean about as well as a maid at a cheap hotel. According to the Senate report, 9 out of 16 U.S. hospitals with superbug outbreaks were linked to scopes were using custom ultrasonics equipment. The report even said that it was clear the equipment played a significant role in allowing the scopes to remain contaminated between uses. The FDA even ordered Custom Electronic System 83 Plus machines off the market, accusing the company of repeated safety violations and put patients at risk. Case closed, right? Yeah, not exactly. The FDA just announced last week that it was reversing course and that hospitals could keep using the machines while Custom Ultrasonics sorted out its sad little problems. Are you kidding me? What is there to sort out? The machine either works or it doesn't. And there's enough evidence now to raise some serious red flags. So why exactly is the FDA stopping its own recall and ignoring a Senate investigation? Well, that's the million-dollar question. The FDA is claiming it received some new information from Custom Ultrasonics, but nobody at the agency will say exactly what that information is. Have you ever seen such arrogance in your life? The FDA is potentially putting all of us in harm's way, and they don't think we're owed a decent explanation. It looks like there was some serious arm twisting going on, and the FDA, as expected, folded under pressure. We know by now that we can't expect the FDA to protect us, but there are two things we can do all right now to keep ourselves safe and hold the agency accountable. Number one, when you're going in for surgery, the last thing you want to think about is how the scopes are cleaned. But with all the infections we're seeing, it's a fair question. Experts recommend looking for a facility that sterilizes its scopes with peracetic acid between patients. Well, that's a question for your doctor for your next surgery. Number two, write your members of Congress and demand that they investigate why the FDA suddenly scrapped its recall of custom ultrasonic scope cleaners. Because the FDA is doing its best to keep us in the dark, but it's high time we started getting some answers. And ladies and gentlemen, it is time for topic number 5. You know, the risk of amputation is one of the scariest complications of having diabetes. The good news about that, however, is that diabetes-related amputations have been dropped by around half over the last 2 decades. That's said to be due to better foot and wound care and better diabetes management. But if you or someone you love has type 2 and your management involves the new med Invokana, you see commercials all the time, you can toss all those reassuring statements right out the window. Because after sitting on the facts for over 5 years, once again, the FDA has finally gotten around to issuing a warning to anyone who uses this drug that the risk of losing a toe, foot, or leg is bigger than ever. Ever since Invokana hit the market in 2013, we've been hearing nothing but horror stories about its side effects. In an attempt to stop the drug's approval, Dr. Sidney Wolf, past director of Public Citizens Health Research Group, went before the FDA's Drug Advisory Committee to present evidence showing that this dangerous drug will be too dangerous for those with type 2 diabetes. And he was right. As we told you, right around this time last year, research was revealed that patients taking Invokana were experiencing up to twice the rate of amputations as those taking a placebo. So what did the FDA do about it? True to form, it issued one of those safety alerts on its website and said that it planned to investigate this problem further. At that time, the agency was quick to tell us that mostly toes were involved, and if that somehow was going to make it sound less risky, that a little piggy went to the market and he never came home. Well, its investigation is finally finished, and yes, Invokana is clearly associated with doubling of the risk for both leg and foot amputations, besides that little piggy that never came home. The risk was so clear-cut, in fact, that the FDA is now requiring a black box warning to be put on the drug packaging. That's right, it looks like the same med that's supposed to be protecting you from amputation could end up costing you your limbs itself instead. But this finding isn't really a surprise, because this amputation danger is something that a monitoring committee for Invokana has been analyzing for around 5.5 years. It's all part of those most ridiculous and risky idea ever put into practice, where a drug is allowed to be put on the market while the safety studies are still ongoing. That basically allows a company to make millions of dollars on its meds before we learn how dangerous it really is. You know, approve the drug and now the studies really begin. But with Invokana, there may be more than just limbs at stake. Invokana and other diabetes drugs in the same family, called SGLT2 inhibitors, work by dumping glucose in your urine. And experts have warned that can cause dehydration, abnormally low blood pressure, and damage to the kidneys and heart. As Public Citizens Dr. Wolf warned years ago, the way the drug works can cause a cascade of adverse events. Even having moderately reduced kidney function, he said, put people at high risk with the drug. On top of that, the FDA has already issued other warnings about how Invokana can trigger a life-threatening condition called ketoacidosis. So if your doctor has prescribed Invokana, Invokamet, or even SGLT2 inhibitors like Farxiga, Jardiance, Glyzambia, or Zigduo XR, you see commercials for all of these, it's urgent that you talk with them as soon as possible about what your alternatives are, because your limbs and maybe even your life could depend upon it. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us go to our testimony section. We've got 4 good ones today. Let's start with this one. Dr. Harry, I love the cardio product. It really does bring benefits to the cardio system. The service on orders is outstanding and always sent the same day when possible. I have never encountered a problem of any kind in all the years I have ordered from the Health Guardian. Excellent products and service. Thank you for that, Shirley. Testimony number 2. Dr. Harry, I had prostate cancer in 2009, which resulted in the removal of the prostate and all the side effects that go along with that, specifically ED. A big part of my recovery was starting Cardio for Life with the L-arginine to help speed my recovery and get the nerves working again so I could have as normal as possible a love life. I now have no erectile dysfunction. It took a while, but all is good now. I've been using Cardio for Life ever since. Great product, fast shipping, tastes great. Lots of great vitamins, good for your overall health. I plan to keep taking it going forward. Well, thanks for that, Greg. By the way, Man Up, another one of my products, that also helps with ED. So if your testosterone is low, I just got a report this past week. A gentleman told me that his doctor put him on a testosterone patch, but his blood pressure skyrocketed, his heart raced, he couldn't take it. He went on my Man Up. His testosterone level went from 250 to 450. And the doctor said it had nothing to do with your product you're taking, of course. And he said his love life is completely reversed to the better. All right. Testimony number 3. I've been long affiliated with the Health Guardian, and for many good reasons. Many years before Dr. Harry and I became acquainted, cardiovascular health had become a distinct interest to both in my personal life and for the sake of my family, as well as in relation to many clients. After using numerous formulations of cardio supplementation that were generated in the years following the award of the Nobel Prize in Medicine to Dr. Ignarro, finally Dr. Harry developed his Cardio for Life formula. It has been one of the best formulas available and is more economical than any other that I have used, and it has been exceptionally effective at reversing and preventing heart disease, all measurable with a DPA or smart pulse device. Thanks, Dr. Harry, for making this formulation available to the world. And absolutely. And that's from David. Thanks, David. By the way, I just got a report this past yesterday, as a matter of fact. A lady from Australia told me that one of our competitors, Pro-Arginine, raised the price of their supplement from $79 to $99, and it has half the ingredients of Cardio for Life, which costs $39. So they're talking about, you know, taking my product now, along with they have people in Italy and Dubai and New Zealand and so on. So yes, our product is very affordable, and my product works very well, and it has oftentimes more ingredients than the other products on the market, and we come in so many different flavors now, it's ridiculous. If you like pina colada, never mind. Okay, Dr. Harry, finally, I first want to say that 2 years ago I contacted you about my dad and his heart health after having a stent put in, and you told me he should be taking Cardio for Life 2 times a day. He has been doing that and is off all his heart meds that were killing him, and his quality of life is exceptional. I believe he wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for your Cardio for Life and your great advice. Thanks, Mark, for that testimony. So, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our top 5 to stay alive for July. July 4th is coming up. Don't forget, be very careful with your fingers when you're lighting those fireworks. If you are willing to take that risk, I am not. I did that in the past. I'm beyond that now. And I just want to close out with a little tribute to our country, and you can listen and enjoy with me if I can just get this. Here we go.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night like a light from above. From the mountains to the prairie,